Are you ready for a daycation? Hey, it's Bryon Muffin back with a beer review, and today from Highland Brewing in Asheville, North Carolina, we have Daycation IPA, Hoppy Floral Session IPA. I don't know what the alcohol is because I can't read it. It's 4.9, I think. It's green on green. That line underneath, if you can read it, not the line you can see, not this line, but that line. I don't know if it's a faded, this has been in the back of the refrigerator for way too long. And and it's got a dent here and a dent here, and I don't know why I got it that way. It was a gift from somebody who went down to a UT game in Knoxville, and I was like, give me something hoppy. And they brought me back beer from Asheville. I'm like, there are breweries in Knoxville. You can't give me something local? Ooh, floral is right. So session IPAs quite often skimp on the malts to keep the alcohol down. And if you're not careful, they skimp on the hops. In my view, it's an opportunity to get the hop bill up, but not bitter. So what I've done, I have done some session IPA, session-ish IPAs, we'll say. It's been many years. And that's when I started experimenting with Citra. I mean, obviously doing some of the piney stuff is kind of obvious, but there was another one that I did. Cascade is the big one everyone likes to use. But there was something, Simcoe? Was it a Simcoe hop? Now, some of the ones, is it Warrior? This is again, you know, I think Warrior I used to love using as a bittering hop because it's really bitter. But some of those hops you can actually use as, and some of them I use in secondary, but with a session IPA, you don't have enough alcohol. But really, you get around 8 or 9%, you have enough alcohol in secondary, you can use them to really pull those resins out, those oils out of the, of course I'm using hop pellets, that makes a big difference. But that one, this one's interesting. So there's a little bit of notice on citrus and floral on the nose. And there's something else there. And unfortunately, I hadn't had this out of the refrigerator for long enough. I forgot to get it out, and then I got it out, got some busy doing other stuff. Take a daycation with this hop forward and complex sessionable IPA. Okay, so that's what I'm picking up. So the complexity of the aroma and flavors without the bitterness. So that's what I'm saying. Some of those hops that people use for Northern Brewer, probably not so much, but some of those bittering hops are actually really good aroma hops. However, you have to be very careful with them because you don't want to pick up the bittering units. Which I think is that the betas or is that the alphas? I think it's the alphas, and then the beta content, I think it has something to do with how it conditions. It's been too long. But, okay, now, this is definitely one to warm up. The floral complexity is starting to show up finally. So when an IPA is cold, and beer in general, but IPAs, certain pale ales that have a complexity to them, typically when they're cold, you might pick up some of the aromas on the nose from the hops, but you'll pick up the bitterness definitely. And then as it warms up a little bit, you'll get the aromas from the hops more. Quite often, depending on their malt bill, if they have a complex malt bill, in particular they're not really adjuncts, but they're secondary malts that don't contribute much to the base alcohol, but contribute to the flavor. Depending on what they use, because what I've noticed is biscuit malt will show up much earlier, and aroma malts will show up much earlier, but then certain caramel malts and some of the debittered pieces won't show up till later. And so you need it more like 50, 55 degrees to get that balance. Now, a big problem with some of those beers is once they get the temperature, they continue on and then they're too warm. And you don't have a koozie keeping it at 55 degrees. Sorry. But this is the wrong, I chose the wrong kind of glassware for this. This is good for things that aren't so fizzy, but it has a nice head for what it is. Man, I don't know why I'm so gassy, but I like the almost peach color of this. It's got a nice, it's not very clear. Is this unfiltered? Doesn't say. I'm going to guess it is. Session IPA ale brewed and canned by Highland Brewing, Asheville, North Carolina. But anyway, hoppy floral. Yeah, there's a mild bitterness. It's noticeable on the nose, and it's there all the way through. And I don't know if it's the canning process or if it's meant to be there, but it doesn't taste like it's meant to be there. It is an off flavor. It doesn't fit with the balance of everything else. And so I don't know, I'm betting this is, so 719 this was filled on, and this has been sitting in my refrigerator. So I don't know how much of it's that. And it's been too long since I had the other part of this pack when it was fresh, because I meant to do these beer tasting, because I could have sworn that was early September. But it may have been further than that. It was during the season, and I don't remember which game they went to see in Knoxville. And it's near the end of October now. So, but it was kind of old when they bought it, because I know they wouldn't have bought it in August. Maybe late August, and it surely was not late July, not long after it was canned. And I don't know how long it takes to get from Asheville to Knoxville on some short store shelf. I'm not even sure where they bought it. They just bought it maybe Kroger or something. I mean, for all I know, they bought it at the Food Lion up the street. And there's a thinness to this too, right mid-mouth toward the back. There's a thinness. It kind of comes as watery, which is not odd in a session IPA, because right there is where the malt bill would normally be that give you a better mouthfeel, but then your alcohol is going to be 6.5%, 7%. And so if you're going for 4.9 or lower, there's concessions are going to be made. But for a session IPA, I will say this is very flavorful. What you don't have is the malt complexity. You have the hop complexity, but you don't have the malt complexity, because with the malt complexity comes more sugars and more alcohol. So, hey, what you gonna do? Unless you're using some adjunct malts and stuff that contribute the wrong kinds of sugars or sweetness that the yeast don't care for. But then you end up with too sweet a beer. But no, I like this. This is definitely one that if you want an IPA and the IPA presence, but you don't want it weighing down your meal or getting in the way of whatever you're eating, this is a very good one. There's lots of times what I find with the session IPAs in particular is they're either too weak, the arrangements aren't there, or they get, dank is not the right word, because I don't mind the danky, they get skunky-ish, right? Years ago at BJ's, I had one of their session IPA, and it was like someone took a horrible IPA and drained it through a gym sock, and it was one of the worst IPAs I've ever had. And the only beer good at BJ's I've ever had was not brewed on premise. It was actually what was it? It was a Belgian beer, but I forget what it was called. But they brewed it and then delivered it to the restaurants. And part of the problem that I have with that chain is they don't have a brewer on site. They just have someone who pushes a button. And so almost all the beers made there have no soul, no character, no heart. And then stuff that they actually make and ship to the restaurants is 1,000 times better. But no, this is a good 4 out of 5 session IPA. As you can see now, the head is kind of showing up. It's kind of getting a little more lively, because again, this is the wrong kind of glass for that. This is made for more of a French Canadian beer. Actually, it's Unibrow, which is Belgian-ish. And those have carbonation, but it's kind of a lazy carbonation that you get in that tulip glass. And so, but yeah, there's some kind of off flavor that I don't know if it's supposed to be there or not. If it's supposed to be there, then this is like a 2.5. But I'm going to assume because of the age of this beer, it's not supposed to be there, and I'm not going to count it against it. But hey, let me know in the comments below if I'm full of crap and that off flavor is there, and this is not as good a session IPA as I want to believe. But this really feels like a solid 4 for a session IPA. There's just enough floral, just enough hops. The malts could be a little better. That would be give it a 4.5 if the malt complexity was there. But that's very tough to do and not end up with fermentable sugars and end up past your target for a session IPA. But for a flavorful beer that you can have with just about anything, this is pretty good. So 4 out of 5. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much, and we will see you. Goodbye.